Welcome back, everyone. We are back. Welcome to the GMS Magazine podcast. I am Paco Garcia, and I am not alone.
This is Chris from Deus Ex Machina, and I am also not alone.
I didn't mean you, though. I meant my dog, and you probably meant your Degus.
Yeah, my Degos are over here.
Oh, we can see them though. Anyway, this is a podcast just in case you've never heard of us before, which would be, well, the usual. This is a podcast all about role playing games and board games and the people who make them and sometimes the people who play them. Because today I have somebody I want to talk about who plays games. And today we're doing an experiment, humans. Today, over the last, few weeks, we have done this live in YouTube because we wanted to get some interactions with our listeners, which we have at some point. But we have also found out that because these podcasts, are not, oh my God, they're so adorable.
Now you can see them.
Yeah, well, if you are just listening to the podcast in iTunes or whatever, know that in YouTube we have this video podcast, and you can see Chris's Dekus, which are absolutely adorable. Anyway, we found out that because these podcasts are not in the usual, video feed, people can find them and they don't comment as much. So now we're going to do them back for a couple of weeks in, recorded, pre-recorded, and we would like to hear what you have to say. If you prefer, live or pre-recorded, this is going to be entirely, completely, and utterly up to you, wonderful listener. So, having said that,
Can you see me?
No, I can see your Degus.
Yeah, I went off camera and then it's just decided. So I think it's like, you know what? The Degus are far more interesting.
Well, what's happening with you tonight? I mean, has somebody, kind of, I don't know, cursed you or something?
Yeah, one second. Let me get into.
I love this.
Like literally, I went off camera and it decided, like, you know what? This guy's not interesting anymore. These animals are far more interesting. Let me go into this and figure. And there we go. I think I'm back now. There we are. Okay. So yes, we are talking games. Not talking about my adorable Degus. This is Gizmo, and that is Digit. But yeah, a couple of things. I definitely been looking at the comments. Some of our previous videos. I know one person was commenting. Jonathan Green is looking for an update on the Inside the Box games debacle. He posted this 2 months ago, and yes, obviously there has been a British company, Naylor, has purchased Inside the Box's assets. They are going to fulfill the previous Kickstarters that they can. All people need to do is pay for shipping. This is a really good idea, and I'm really, really hoping it for the future. So that was one thing I saw. I am going to go back and say that Warzone map drawing you did, time lapse, I love that. You should do more of those.
Thank you.
And then obviously talking to about the last uploaded video that we did, which we're talking about the WotC Summit, Mixed Species in D&D, and the Honor Among Thieves review. And that's what we were talking about before we decided to start recording.
Yeah, that is correct. And the reason I mentioned that is because somebody left a comment and I replied that I thought it would make for a very good topic of conversation. But I can see where this person, who I don't know their names or anything, they're basically called Anonymous, which I suppose is a clever attempt at anonymous kind of thing. Made a comment that I thought, okay, yeah, sure it works like this. This is the comment, based on the last week's conversation about the half races, so on and so forth. And Andy says, You can't remove sensitive issues like slavery and half races, in inverted commas, of course, without also confronting other sensitive issues like alcohol use, demons and devils, drug use, gambling, graphic violence, magic, murder, nudity, prostitution, sexual situations, strong language, suicide, theft, tobacco use, torture, weapon use, etc. The sensitivity readers will remove so many sensitive subjects from the game that you won't have a game to play anymore. Here's the lesson. You can't remove one sensitive subject without going down the line and removing them all. There is a separation that needs to be respected between the real world and an imaginary world. The modern-day world, with all of its social politics, should never be forced into the confines of an imaginary world. There is no point in gaming in a fantasy world if modern-day politics are dictating the rules of what can and can't exist. Okay, where do we start with all this bullshit? I'm sorry, Andy, but it's just complete utter bullshit.
Well, my issue before you get into it is that there's two statements at work here, and which are a little contradictory, which I wanted to address. First of all, you have you can't remove sensitive issues without confronting other issues. There's that. And sensitivity readers will remove so many topics you won't have a game anymore. And then you can't remove one sensitive subject without going down the line removing them all. But then there's this other point. There's a separation that needs to be respected between the real world and imaginary world. And this is the part where I feel like there's a contradiction. Calm down. Very nice. One is this one person. One part of the statement, I think this is where the confusing part is, where one statement seems to indicate that you shouldn't remove any of these sensitive topics, but then there says there's a separation that needs to be respected between real world and imaginary world. The modern day world, with all of its social politics, should not be forced into the confines of an imaginary world. Now, if you know things like, and this is a conversation I've been having often with people, is because that Star Trek is coming back into the scene in a big bad way. They had an amazing season of Star Trek Picard. They have a bunch of really good things going. And I always remembered about the fact that Star Wars fans are not by a majority, but there's a toxic element that the other side, the rest of the fandom, hasn't been responsible enough to address. And then I have said that Star Trek fans have been addressing, because Star Trek has been something that's been progressive. And since the 60s, they have been using their medium as a way of addressing everything regarding to society. So to say that fantasy we shouldn't force the real world into fantasy is so unbelievably short-sighted and ignorant. I can't even begin to state. And I don't think that to be necessarily what this person's trying to say, but I'm saying it's implying the fact this person and the fact that realize the fact that I don't know almost any fantasy story that hasn't pulled. And someone's going to say, what about Lord of the Rings? I go, Lord of the Rings has a very pronounced political agenda regarding the industrialization of society and the kind of ignorance of nature. There is a huge section involving that. And slavery, racism has permeated fantasy fiction for decades. And some of the most well-known games and novels and movies have addressed this very issue. I think this person's trying is there's a difference between addressing a topic and when you have a topic like racism or anything. Take this person's massive list from of sensitive subjects.
Like magic.
Some of them, yeah. Well, the thing is, oddly, how magic is not. Yeah, we'll get into that. Okay, I know what you're getting at, because magic is very controversial, but the irony, for example, like the fact that D&D, we have to keep politics out of D&D, and yet the fact that you have proof of gods in most fantasy settings, which right there is incredibly controversial. Some people who are religious don't like the fact that there are other religions and other gods that actually exist in their fantasy world. So there is no way. You're always going to kind of offend somebody. But the idea that a sensitivity reader would have you remove everything, I think is ludicrous. I don't think there's a single person who is a sensitivity reader that would come in and look at that massive list and says you have to remove all of these. I don't believe that's the case. And so to the other persons who we haven't talked yet, that Nidaloth, who talks about mixing politics with D&D, fantasy and storytelling mixes that stuff all the time. There are politics in D&D right now. There were politics in D&D in the 80s. It depends on what you consider.
Not having it. It's impossible not having it. Simple as that. It's impossible. So, yeah. Sorry. So, I mean, firstly, let's not go the rabbit hole of if you remove one, you have to remove them all, because that's the highest order of nonsense. Seriously, let's not go in there. That is completely ridiculous, and that is the kind of narrative that some people throw or have tried throwing at me, because I am a pro LGBTQI plus equal rights advocate and militant, vocal person. And somebody started, no, you cannot be that if you don't also fight for blah, 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 blah.
I pick my battles.
Exactly, and these are the things that affect me. So you cannot tell me that if I fight for one thing, or if I don't want to see one thing in games, then I cannot possibly want to see everything else. We have to get rid of everything else, because that is completely ludicrous. That just doesn't work at all. That is an imposition made simply to put the bar so high that the other side cannot possibly jump over it. And it is a fallacy of the highest proportion. Also, not to mention that you're talking about things that are not really sensitive, like nudity or strong language, or, I don't know, weapon use or magic. So come on, let's get real
like
here.
This list is intentionally long for no reason.
Well, the second comment is even longer.
Yeah, I know the comment is long because it deals with stuff like sensitive topics and just the word pain. Like, I don't know what that means. Just pain. And the funny thing is the fact that when I look at these, you'll understand the fact that almost like there are every fantasy setting I have ever read or been involved with, including games, has touched on a half a dozen of the things on this list at any point in time. Exactly. Like if you're once again dealing with Star Trek has had 500 episodes of television, and so they can address, and they probably have addressed every one of these at some point during their run. Exactly. So we know the fact that people do address it. The difference is what we're talking about, and what sensitivity readers are meant to. There is where you inadvertently insult a group that you're not trying to insult because the message got muddled. It's okay if you're trying to make a message and a reader, someone who's looking over your work, is looking at it going, yeah, you're making the right point. Like I said with one of the reviews, some of the negative reviews I got for Amethyst, the 2 or so reviews I've gotten where people have attacked the political views in Amethyst, I look at that and go, well, at no point did I read these people's comments and go, oh, I should change that. You're going to upset people with your writing. No matter, you can write Teletubbies and someone's going to take offense. And we've seen exactly that. People get offended at Teletubbies. People are look at what's going on with the Mario movie right now. The hard right-wing people were complaining up and down on a stack of carpet samples that Mario had gone woke, that it was a left-wing agenda, blah, 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 and that the film was going to bomb because go woke, go broke. Then the film came out, made $1 billion, and now those same people are rewriting the narrative by saying that this film is a success because it's anti-woke. And the funny thing is, you can see these videos on the channel. You can see the line of thinking. Before the film came out, they're saying this film's going to fail because it's woke. And then the film came out, and then now they're rewriting it by saying it's anti-woke. And the fact that people will find something to be upset about. And the trick is if people are getting the right, it's like you're interpreting it correctly. I have no problem insulting this group of people. I have no problem inflaming this topic because the right message is going out. A sensitivity reader is there, in my opinion, to catch you in case you make a connection or you, like there have been situations like we talked about, you and I, we talked about it just last week regarding a certain book cover I had where nobody anywhere spotted it until one person did one little thing to the logo and we all stopped and we all just saw it. And at that point, a sensitivity reader is like, yeah, that should be something you should address. And we did. But they're not there to say you have to remove polytheism from your story because that's going to offend people.
Okay, but that really depends an awful lot. I have done a little bit of editing, or sensitive editing for some games.
And you're the sensitivity reader on my project.
Correct. So, and yes, it is my job to tell you this thing is poorly portrayed, or this thing is mistaken in the way that it is addressed and it should be changed because of so and so and so. So, for instance, if somebody was talking to me about LGBT things and they portrayed bisexual people as people who are Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays into men, Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays into women, and Sunday they rest, then I would say you need to change that, because that is not how bisexual people work. So you need to do it. That's it. And that would be my job. But it's not necessary to remove things, but to portray them in the most accurate, best possible way without not just offending, but harming the group of people targeted. I did a little bit of sensitivity work for Johnny Hodgson regarding the Roma Gypsy community in the United Kingdom for a game that he published. And one of the things that I mentioned to him is you can use the word gypsy, but just put it into context, because that is the word that gypsy people use to refer to themselves in the UK and Spain, which is why I use it. So I understand that it is considered to be more offensive in other parts of the world, but there are two things. Culturally, is not offensive to me, and B, I am part of that community, so nobody's going to tell me how I can address myself.
Yeah.
Full stop. So that is the sort of thing that you need to, as a sensitivity reader, an editor, you need to tell people, this is what's going to happen, this could be the situation, this should be the solution. And then the writer, the editor can do whatever they decide they want to do. But it doesn't mean that a sensitive reader has to get rid of everything. I did some editing, some sensitivity reading for the adventure in the Hellboy RPG. And one of the things I said is be careful with how you use the Nazis here, 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 and here, because they are not portrayed as what they actually are. So you have to be careful. And they did rewrite a few sentences to make sure that what I mentioned was taken into account. So it's not a matter of getting rid of everything. It's a matter of getting rid of the content that is not necessarily relevant, or it can harm other people.
Yeah, it's about a good reader is understanding the message and making sure it doesn't get muddled by incorrect wording or so forth. Or and it's one of those, and the thing is, if you talk to someone and you find out that no, they are intentionally trying to make this statement, then you're like, well, you have to be prepared for the consequences of this, because you're going to upset people. And I'm aware of that. It's one of those situations where, and partially this is thanks to having conversations with you, I'm trying to become more aware of how somebody gets presented and go, okay, can this be, because I write from a perspective where, of who I am. So by default, my characters in my narrative stories are generally, heterosexual men. It's just because that's my I write the story for 90% of the time. I'm placing myself in that situation. These two novel projects I'm working on, Retroverse Chronicles and Dream of the Tempest, both have heterosexual male characters as the lead. And so it's one of those, because for me, my perspective is, well, I know that. But when I did Affinity, which was a large ensemble, I made a point of trying to flip that. So I was challenging myself as a writer. But that still being said, it became necessary for me to go, okay, am I getting this right? Because, it's one of those situations where I don't want to be a Joss Whedon. I don't want to be a person that thinks he's a feminist without talking to women about what he's writing.
Mm-hmm.
Because he thought he was a feminist, and he wrote things from the perspective that he believed without realizing that he was not being a feminist. He was being actually sexist, but no one was calling him out on it until it was too late and his ego got in the way.
Yes.
And we now look at later. So for me, that's where you want to get into play. You want to have that sensitive reader to go in and go, hey, this is your message, but this is where it could go off the rails if you're not careful. So Amethyst, talking to Seth Heaven, I'm looking at this list and going, yep, I got that. And I can look at it and go, I don't mind these things because it's important for those to be in the story. And I don't think people are going to get triggered if they're reading something because there's a little bit of gore. Because unfortunately, I hate to say this, you'd be surprised what people will understand. I'm trying to understand where shape-shifting, by the way, is.
Well, there's something else. I mean, there are more things.
Because there's so many problems with shape-shifting in our modern society.
Well, the other thing is there's a separation that needs to be respected between the real world and an imaginary world. Well, no, I don't need to respect anything about imaginary worlds. I could go tomorrow and shit on the face of Gandalf if I wanted to, and that would be absolutely fine because it's imaginary world. That is it. Gandalf wouldn't mind if I did that. He wouldn't care if I took his staff and turned it into a freaking dildo. He just wouldn't give a shit because it doesn't exist.
Yeah. So it comes down to, it's like, and this is not really related, but a friend of mine we were watching on Star Trek Discovery, and my friend, who's very intelligent, said, "Those aren't my Klingons." And I said to him, "Yeah, you're right. Klingons should be white people with blackface because that's how they looked like in 1968. Get over yourself. It's a TV show. Shit changes."
Well, and the thing is, there's not your Klingons. Fine, they don't have to be. They don't have to be made for you. That's it. So we don't have to respect fantasy at all. We don't need to respect this. This is like people who, oh no, keeping the law is just a matter of respect. No, law and canon can go fuck itself.
And that's why ultimately I love Star Trek more than Star Wars, because the fandom in Star Wars have hijacked the medium and are trying to fight its efforts to try to be something more than just costumes and a children's show about space wizards. And Star Trek does it constantly makes that effort to change itself and adapt, and I always find that much more interesting.
Okay, and one last thing, which is what I find the funniest of this whole thread, is the modern day world, with all of its social politics, should never be forced into the confines of an imaginary world. And what do you think slavery is? I mean, you're telling me that you should not force getting rid of slavery, but you should be able to have slavery there. You're forcing all these issues by simply saying that you cannot get rid of them. You're forcing people into putting them in there. And then you have to put up with them in there.
Yeah.
You are literally demanding that we keep modern day social politics like slavery, like hatred, like homophobia in your games.
Yeah. Now, that being said, as you were saying as well, and this was also stressed, as a writer, we're not responsible to always include these things. It's nice, and I think as society adapts, we should be more responsible of creating stories that represent. And this is where things I think it can be political, where I have a gay character in Affinity. Why? Because maybe 20 years ago I wasn't aware of the demographics, and as an economical writer, as somebody who wants to make money, I look at this situation going, well, I have 12 characters. If I make one character gay, I get to attract an audience that I usually don't attract to. So from a financial standpoint, I want to be like that. So there's multiple reasons to mix those things together, because you can create spaces where people can go, hey, this is interesting because it involves me. And so if you involve mental illness, which is on this list, like mental illness, and someone says that it's not insulting if you are portraying it properly. You can include almost any topic if you're trying to make a conversation about it. So it's one of those situations where you have to be cognitively aware of the politics of the day because it does change. And I'm not interested in telling stories that people in the 60s would find interesting, but people in the 90s don't. I'm writing for people in 2023, and I have to write for an audience that embraces what I embrace and the people that I'm trying to attract in 2023. I'm not interested in the views of people who don't read my work. I'm interested in the people I want to attract, and that is a broad, inclusive, broadly accepting group of people. And for those people who are not, I'm not writing for you, so I don't have any obligation to.
Okay, well, that's I think that's all I want to say about this topic. I'm sorry, I'm anonymous, but your point of pushing.
I mean, for me, I'm trying to be more political here. I'm trying to say the fact that I think that they might not have understood exactly what we were trying to say, and I think that perhaps their message got muddled in the response. So I invite them to clarify or call us out. As for the Nightiloff, what is because you said let the guy rest in peace, and then you said he is already resting in peace. That episode was 2 weeks ago. I can't remember what in the world we were talking about. Who died that we talked about during the Dungeons and Dragons podcast?
Kim Mohan.
What?
Kim Mohan.
Okay.
He was a very prominent figure in TSR, and people universally loved him.
Gotcha.
I never really get to know the man, but everybody absolutely loved him, and he was the only person within the old school of D&D that got a credit. Ed Greenwood did not, and neither did Gary Gygax or Dave Anderson as creators. So that was it. But yeah.
So a little bit of news before we get into the reviews here.
Wait. When you have the news, I have something else that I want to talk about.
Okay, you want to talk about it first, then?
No. Let's go for the news.
Okay. So a couple things. Pathfinder 2nd edition is remastering its core rulebooks to split themselves from D&D OGL and make learning the RPG easier. This is, in my opinion, not a great idea, not because of the reasoning, but the time. Pathfinder 2nd edition hasn't been out very long, and for them to re-release a remastered version, I think the old version only maybe 3 or 4 years old tops, and now they're already re-releasing. Someone's going to say 3.5 came out only a couple of years after, but it's still, there's been a lot of people commenting that there's no real reason to republish just because of the OGL got resolved. And my point, people that are trying to or who are publishers that are trying to abandon the OGL so they can make things under Orc and so forth, I go, you realize that's past. From this point on, you're making a statement. You're not legally protecting yourself, because now that the OGL, basically all the content from the OGL has been dumped into public domain, there's no point. Like, at this point, signing on to some of these other licenses is and if you want to do it because you're angry, go right ahead. But to have Pathfinder republish their 2nd edition books, and the funny thing is, as I've said, the 2nd edition isn't popular. It's still a smaller percentage than the original Pathfinder, and for them to remaster and then re-release updated versions is already splitting a very small community. They're also releasing a special limited edition set of books that the covers are sketches rather than full color, so they're black and white. That's very interesting, and it's only available in game stores.
Okay, that's an interesting, and I have to say, very nice move. I like it.
I know the people who are doing Elden Ring also are republishing Altar Quest, which is the spiritual successor of Hero Quest. And finally, what I have is I think we're going to be talking about the collapse of Mythic games in the next year. I'm trying to understand the reasoning for what they're doing. I mean, I understand the reasoning, But if their margins are so narrow and if they're making so little money that they have to go back to their backers and say, by the way, we're asking for a contribution, it's tough. So suffice to say, Darkest Dungeon is a year behind schedule. It was 2020 when it launched. It's 2023 now. No indication of when it's being out, and now they're asking for contributions. Some people have said if you add in the contributions, it's looking like an extra 30 to 40% up. I mean, a $39 core pledge. So it's a $69 core pledge adds another $39. The $199 gameplay all in increases by $99. The original pledge of premium all in for $269 goes up $129. So some people are receiving new invoices of $249 with $78 US for shipping. And they are, of course, pointing at the shipping crisis, Ukraine, and a lot of other reasons. Reasons, by the way, like I said, I mean, I saw the price increase as well. But yeah, this is, as you might imagine, the six Siege board game, which that's what it was. They did their updated when they're it was April 30th, so just only a couple of days ago when they have asked for this contribution. I like how it's like we're asking for a contribution, but it's not obviously going down very well, and a lot of people are asking for refunds. And this is only the latest in Mythic Games stepping on a situation, and this is already a company where their Kickstarters are already obscenely priced because of what they're offering, and the shipping prices were already insane. And now for them to go back and say we need another $500,000 to complete this Kickstarter, it's one of those situations where this is the danger, this is the risk, and I see so many people getting angry and walking away from Kickstarter. And I always say, like, it has nothing to do with Kickstarter. It has to do with you guys throwing your funding to these gigantic projects that will be late and will have overruns. The more people and the more things that game has, the bigger the problem is going to be. Not everyone's going to be Awakened Realms that managed to have this infrastructure in place. I mean, even them, I can't even begin to tell you how much I spent on Nemesis. Sometimes I look at the bill and go, holy crap. But it's always going to be a problem. And sometimes I go, you know what? Back the smaller companies that have several games that are like, and I'm not trying to say Narromata specifically, but I look at Narromata and go, here is a campaign that wasn't $180, it wasn't $150, it was $75. We didn't have minis, we just had wooden meeples and so forth. But because we weren't huge, they didn't have huge minis. We weren't a fantasy or sci-fi, and we didn't have an IP. We didn't make really any very much money. And so when people go to, I'm quitting Kickstarter because of Mythic Quest. Mythic Games. I look at it and go, well, no, that's
the wrong approach.
That's the wrong approach.
That's the wrong approach. I mean, I have been in one situation with a company that I back every single project that they do, where they were truly caught up with the shipping and the paper crisis. And it's Studio Agate. They are a French company that made Shadows over Esteren. I have met them. I've bought every single book they've ever published, I think. And I adore them. I even backed one of their projects twice by accident. And I was quite happy to pay them. And at one point, the whole kerfuffle really got to them. And they were very honest about it. And they asked, what do you want us to do? Do you want to pay a little bit more and we can ship everything in one go? Or would you rather that we ship things little by little and you will get things later so prices can come down a little bit?
Yeah.
And people have the choice. And overwhelmingly, people voted to give them another $30 so we could get our games as soon as possible. That's it.
Yeah.
You can do that. But you can do that if it is the exception, not the rule. And if it's obvious and real and true that it wasn't a mismanagement problem, that it was that circumstances really overwhelm you, then I think it is fair to say, hey, this has happened. Could you please help?
Yeah.
You know, we are not infallible. Nobody is. So I think it's fair to be able to do that. But if you do it because you mismanaged the project, then I think you should still be able to ask, what do you want to do? Can you help us? We'll send you the game. And then people should say, yeah, and this is the last time you're going to see a dime from me. Period.
Yeah.
But quitting Kickstarter, that's the wrong approach. You are actually proactively hurting people who depend on this kind of contributions for their livelihoods. As you said, go to the small project. Go to people. Don't spend $150 or $200 on a project. Spend $100 on 3 different projects.
Yeah. And this brings up something that I wasn't thinking about, but now I'm thinking about. It was somebody, I can't remember now who it was, but he was commenting the fact that he had 12 Kickstarters that were pending.
Mm-hmm.
I think even you contributed to it.
I did. I have a lot of them who are pending. I can go to Kickstarter and find out.
Yeah, I don't have very many just because our finances are getting tight and we have a lot of games we haven't played. So, but the thing that got me was I felt that most of the comments were locking on the wrong thing. They're making the wrong assumptions. Effectively, the person was saying the fact that, and the comments from a lot of people, which was where I was getting more and more angry. And the thing was, okay, here's if I have more than 10 unfulfilled, no more will be backed by me. I get it. I was like, wow, 10 unfulfilled, that's nuts. And then they're saying I'm exhausted with the 24-month delays. And a lot of the comments, and a couple of people made these comments. These 2 of them specifically. One of them was he's actually on my friend list. One person said, creators need to be like me and have these base Kickstarters already or almost finished at launch, then deliver it a week or 2 after it's ended. Probably easier for me since everything's digital. Another person said, we won't launch a Kickstarter unless the product is done and ready to go into production. The days of we're still working on it should be gone by now. And I got very angry. I said, yeah, okay. First of all, you're right. I don't expect people to have a dozen or more campaigns. I've backed over 80 titles, but I never have more than 4 active at a time. I've run 5 campaigns myself, and only 1 is pending, with the 4th just finishing. Actually, it's finished now. But I said, wow, I think a lot of people need a wake-up call over what crowdfunding is supposed to be. These are people commenting on this thread that take pride in the fact they don't run campaigns unless the project is ready to deliver. Then you don't need Kickstarter. I know this whole economy has been completely corrupted by companies that use Kickstarter as a pre-order service, but there is nothing wrong with running a campaign for an unfinished product. That's the point of Kickstarter. If you have a project that's 100% done, if it doesn't fund, what do? Do you throw all that money away? Every campaign I have run, the project did not exist until the campaign ended. If Affinity, Ultramodern 5 Redo, or Amethyst did not fund, these projects don't get made, and I don't waste time writing them. I don't waste money making them. Having a 1 or 2 year wait on a project should be expected, and those that are complaining that the campaign doesn't ship within 6 months need to check their entitlement. If I know a board game is going to Kickstarter, if a game going to Kickstarter is going to retail regardless, I sometimes will wait because it will be cheaper at retail. And I look for campaigns that appear to me that if this campaign doesn't fund, this game does not exist. And that's why I have problems with so many companies like Mythic Quest, like Steamforged Games. When you look at an Elden Ring or whatever, I go, you know what? This game will exist. They put too much money for this thing not to fail. And then they use Kickstarter for that. And actually, whenever I look at an advertisement on Facebook for a book or a board game and I click on it and it goes to a pre-order page that's not Kickstarter, I respect that. I respect anybody who has a company that puts their product out because they know it's going to come out and not go through Kickstarter. But for me, especially for the time being, Kickstarter is my route because we don't have that infrastructure, because I don't make projects as I know it's worthwhile, because I can't waste my time on something that'll fail. So that was something that happened. So yeah, we were talking about Kickstarters.
Right. Do you want the figure?
What? Oh, you want? Oh, Yeah, tell me.
Since I started backing projects, so we are talking 2010, in 13 years, I have thus far 31 projects that I haven't seen the results yet. Only a few of them are really old, though. Most of them are projects that are still coming. But 31 projects that I haven't received. Out of 223 projects.
That was my question. Is how many have you backed? So 200 something.
223.
Wow. I've for me that wow, my numbers are very rookie. I have 83 backed. And I'm looking at now here. What do we have here that have not delivered? I know that of these pledges, I do have. Let's see. This one was suspended, unsuccessful, successful, blah, blah, blah. Which one's here? Took my money and did not deliver. Dungeons & Dragons, the documentary. Yep, they took my money and ran off. Eclipse Dawn for the Galaxy, that was just $1, so it didn't matter. That was canceled. That was canceled. Canceled. Pledge. So yeah, of all of them, the only two of them specifically are ones where they took my money and didn't deliver. The RPG, the Dungeons & Dragons documentary, and another one which was for a video game. Video games are very, very risky.
I'll go back to video game.
Yeah, so when I look at here, which one's here? I did the IBAN, which is a big scam. Space Odyssey, that's a scam. Spacecraft, that's very tricky. We talked about that. Unfortunately, the guy who published it has passed away, and I am actually working to see about trying to get that actually fixed. Subterra, Seventh Citadel, which hasn't delivered yet. Splinter, I would click that as received because that just went out yesterday. And a book of RPG riddles, a cartoon, The Sundering, which we talked about last week, Forsaken, which is Noah Alderman's new game, and that's it. That's all I got pending. So my odds are pretty good. Subterra is the only board game that has not delivered, and it might still deliver. So my odds are doing very, very well. I have a very good experience.
Well, the thing is, I have a few of these projects that I haven't received them, not for fault of anybody but my own, and some of them I have. So, for instance, HPast, which is a game I backed a very long time ago. I know that the book was received to the office once after I moved. And I haven't been able to get hold of the copy of the book myself. Same thing or similar happened with Shadowlands and with Metamorphosis Alpha. However, Terramid, Earth Sphere, that's a project that was a complete blunder. Gigantium Academy of the Arcane also was a complete con. Cthulhu Tales, I missed that one, exactly the same as with Sigil and Sign. I missed those two. Shattered Tower, I can't remember what happened there, but if I look into it now, there has been no updates since July last year, so I will probably write that one off. Greg Stoltz's Reign is still coming, and then the rest, most of them are going to be coming, except Ghost Star, which they've also taken the money and run. A one-shot mystery adventure, they've been very good because I missed that one. So I am the kind of person who, especially because of my life situations a couple of years ago, I missed an awful lot of things, and I cannot possibly blame the creators because it is not their fault. So, but yes, 223 projects and 31 not fulfilled yet. But most of them, as I said, they're new. Tranquility, My Singing Monsters is coming. Forbidden Lands, I know it is coming now. The Menagerie is coming. Uncharted Lands as well. The Cthulhu Hack second edition is is being worked on as well. The Sundering, which we haven't interviewed. Mr. Taboo. So your game is also in here. So there's plenty of them that are still coming because I have started to back projects again less than 2 years ago. So there you go.
So on to, you had something to add before we move on to the reviews?
See. Okay, there is a game by Robert Eklund called Stationfall. Stationfall. Now, that game contains an awful lot of characters. And those characters have been given pronouns. And surprise, surprise, to nobody with any level of sense, some of those pronouns are other than he or she.
Is this on a Kickstarter?
No, not anymore. I don't think so. It probably
But was
has been. It probably, yes. I think so.
Is it Ion Games design?
Let me find out. 2023 is coming out by Matt Eklund, by your partner, Matt Eklund, and is by IO Games. Yes.
Okay, so I'm looking at the Kickstarter, and yeah, I see a ton of minis and characters.
Correct. So, what happens when a game reaches that level of success? There are plenty of companies that say, "Hey, can I publish this in so and so language?" So, it's going to be published in Spanish by a company called Masqueoka. Okay. They are a well-known publisher. They've been at it for a fairly long time, and they have a ton of games on the back. But one of the people from Masqueoka didn't have anything more stupid to say in Twitter. Pronombres, pronouns, have been suppressed in the Spanish edition. We will not contribute to fomenting this collective hysteria. And the sky rightfully has fallen over their heads. Because one has to be completely stupid to go out there and do that, especially in Spanish. Because if English is to some degree a gendered language, Spanish is even more so. It is literally impossible to speak Spanish without using pronouns. And the language, because of the way that it has evolved over, well, millennia, is very masculine and feminine.
Yeah.
And
certain languages have that skew.
And we're fighting very hard to actually bring a more inclusive way of talking, which is very, very controversial.
Yeah, Japanese also has the same issue. There's the masculine version and a feminine version.
So this has been happening as well. So this is just one lesson. If the go woke, go broke is a chanting that people still go on with, which is complete nonsense. Go unwoke, go super broke is going to be the next one. You cannot possibly go out there, especially on Twitter, and say such level of transphobic bullshit and not get caught in the mother of all Twitter rages.
Yeah.
What were you thinking? So, if you people here in this episode are a publisher, you're a game designer and you want to have your game published in Spain, remember that Masqueoka, without any consultation, without anything at all, will just erase your inclusive pronouns from your books. This is not about removing sensitive content. This is not about removing controversial or potentially harming issues. This is about erasing inclusive pronouns from your game. Think twice if you really want that. Or if you're one of those bigots who want that, now you know what company to go with.
Wow. Here's something that's humorous. You're talking about the gendered language. This got posted today. And it's a little image that says, in Norwegian, you don't refer to your romantic partner as a boyfriend or a girlfriend. You say, and I'm going to screw this up, kjæreste, which is gender neutral and literally translates to the dearest. And in Swedish, you refer to your boyfriend/girlfriend by saying älskling, which translates into my beloved one. And in Finnish, they say mukhvesti, which means one I don't hate as much as the others.
Okay.
That was funny. And the little meme ends with the words squints at Finland. So I just wanted to share that because I thought it was hilarious.
Okay. Well, okay. So we have reviews now. Yay! We're a gaming podcast.
You first. I always go first, so you go first.
Okay, I'll go first. Okay. Blimey, we've been 49 minutes. Okay. I played a couple of nights. Well, actually, that's not true. Last night, I played a game I brought from Spiel called Monster Busters.
Monster Busters.
Yes, this is the game. It's published by Taiwan Board Game Design. It's designed by Good Game Games. And it is absolutely fantastic. It's a game for 4 to 8 people. It plays in about 20 to 30 minutes. That's not strictly true. You can play in way less than that. And ages 8 or higher. It is a very, very simple game. In this game, you're going to be monster hunters. So you're going to have, in the middle of the table, a card with a monster, and the monster is going to have a level of difficulty that depends on the number of players. So, for instance, you get a level 6 monster that will have 6 points of life or resistance to damage. With 4 players, 7 points with 5 players, so on and so forth, and increasing the difficulty to defeat the monster as there are more players around the table. And then you're going to have a location. And in that location, it may give you or it may not give you some advantage, like, for instance, a village. The villagers will help you, so you can get 3 points of fighting against the monster. Each player is going to have 2 cards in their hands. That's it. And there are 2 different types of cards: attack or flee. You can run away. And you have to play your card in secret, and then every player reveal them at the same time. All the attack cards join their attack points together. And if those attack points, plus whatever you get, if anything, from the location card, is the same or higher as the monster, then you have defeated the monster and you accrue as many points, as many victory points as the value or the difficulty of the monster. So if you defeat a monster with a 6 value, then you get 6 victory points.
Yeah.
However, if on that round you have played a runaway card, then you don't get any points because, you're a coward.
You run away, yeah.
Now, this is where the game gets interesting. Because if you die, then you put a token on the graveyard. And you have 3 of those tokens. So you can die 3 times. And the longer it takes you to die, the more points you're going to accrue.
Right.
Because, it's supposed that you're being the strongest warrior. So the game ends either when you get rid of monsters or locations, or when somebody dies 3 times. And then the 3rd time triggers game end, you check your points, and that's it. The game ends. What's interesting about this game, though, is that some of the runaway cards have, well, I don't know how to explain this, fuck-up effects.
Okay.
So one of the cards could be, for instance, that the player to your left has no attack power this round. So you can contribute to everybody else losing and dying. Because the game, although you play collectively, is not necessarily cooperative. Because the player with the most number of points wins the game. So the best hunter. So you have to play to screw the other players without screwing yourself too much. And because you can only have 2 cards in your hand at any given point, sometimes it happens that you get 2 runaway cards. So you're forced to play a runaway card even if you don't want to. So you may find yourself, stabbing somebody in the back without wanting to do it. Good luck, of course, convincing them later on that you're going to play the good guy and attack together. So the level of paranoia increases as the game goes on. I found it absolutely hilarious. Really loved it. We learned to play it in about 10 minutes flat.
Wow.
We played it 3 times and we had a really, really great time. It was tremendous. Really, really fun.
Wow.
So
yeah.
Monster Busters.
Yeah, that's going to be a tricky game to find.
Yes, it is. But I would say what I always say. Go to your local gaming store and bug them so they can bug the distributors. So hopefully they can get them.
Yeah, my online game store that I usually go to, Board Game Bliss, does actually have it.
There you go. How much is it?
$49.95 Canadian.
So it's about 30 American, 30 US?
35, yeah.
Okay. Considering it's an imports game, that's not too bad, actually.
Yeah, I have not an import. I have a game that's done by a major publisher. I have Paleo.
Okay.
Have you heard of Paleo?
Heard of, not played it or seen it.
I only really know about it originally because of a certain other YouTube channel that criticized it heavily for their portrayal of people in the Stone Age. That was no pun included. No, it wasn't. Yeah, was it? No. Yeah, it was no pun included. And it was primarily over the fact that the caveman all looked white. And yes, I'm going to acknowledge that is most certainly a misstep on their part. I'm looking at it from the game perspective. What is Paleo? I thought originally that this was a cooperative game. So I thought this game was competitive. It's actually a cooperative game. Because most of the time when you see a game like this about caveman, I go like, well, this is going to be a competitive game. It's going to be like Stone Age, which is a game that people will think be thematically similar. And it is similar in that idea that it's set during the Stone Age. But Paleo is in fact a cooperative game. And for those people who are curious what the game is, I will tell you in no uncertain terms what Paleo is. It is a reimagining of Robinson Crusoe, which is one of the most famous cooperative games ever made.
And probably one of the best as well.
One of the best, but Robinson Crusoe isn't perfect. And the 2 primary problems with Robinson Crusoe is that it has a horrifically confusing manual, which makes the game very, very hard to play.
And it's very difficult.
And it is very difficult. Now, only in like the second to last page of the manual, it tells you how to reduce difficulty if need be. My wife and I play that way because we don't want to be just constantly punished. I know Tom Bassel mentioned that Robinson Crusoe was one of his most favorite games. At the time, last time I heard him mention it, he has said he still has not won the game. And I'm a person that can get very discouraged, and I keep on telling people who make board games, cooperative board games, that you are alienating a massive portion of your fan base if you continue to raise the difficulty in your games. And people are starting to finally learn and get the lesson. And I'm seeing games on Kickstarter stepping back and recoiling and dialing back what they were saying because they suddenly start seeing people not back their games because people boast like, this game is going to be the hardest cooperative game you'll ever play. And it was like, yeah, we're not interested. People want fairness. And Paleo is similar in the fact that you are trying to survive day by day. And at the end of every day, okay? At the end of every day, you have to feed and make sure that you have shelter. So it's very similar to, and Robinson Crusoe, it's also about gathering supplies and then trading those supplies in to craft items. And these items that you're crafting will make it easier for you to survive the further challenges and to survive the night. So it is very similar. You hunt for animals. You take food from those animals You scavenge for supplies. You take it back to camp, and you do things with those things. Now, Robinson Crusoe does it with, you have 2 tokens. At the beginning of the day, you all decide what you're going to do that day, and you spread your duties up. And the more you spread out your responsibilities, the greater the chance it's going to fail. But the secret to winning a Robinson Crusoe is to take that risk, to spread your resources, because if you play it safe, you will lose every single time. Paleo, mechanically, is different in the fact that you do have items that you can craft, but unlike Robinson Crusoe, you have to learn them because it's Stone Age. You haven't figured out how to do a hatchet yet. You have to learn how to do a hatchet. So part of the aspect is finding things to make. That's the first thing. The second thing is it's not as narrative, so you don't have you don't have scripted events that then comes back to haunt you. But it is easier in the fact that instead of having a giant board and having everything kind of laid out, you have these 3 little smaller boards that just have cards. This is a card token based system. So, and its mechanic is very different. You have a tribe of people. Starts with 2. You have as many as 4 or more, and you can get to draw a certain number of cards for every one of guys you have, and these have different colored backs on them. These colored backs will give you an indication of what you're going to see when you turn that card over, because you can only pick the card on the back of it. You can't see what's on the face of the card. You can only see what's on the back of the card. And so you look on the back of the card, it could be forest, river, mountains, or a crisis. And one of them is returning to camp. And certain cards, and then when you pick a card, you resolve them, and they may be a crisis that you have to resort, an animal you get to hunt, and you can also cooperate. If someone has a crisis that they can't resolve, you could ignore your crisis, like throw it, and handle their crisis. And then you can continually do this as often as you want until you run out of cards, because you take this deck and you distribute it evenly to all the players. So in a 2-player game, you've got a lot of cards you can go through. So this is one of those games where how the game plays is radically different based on the number of players. There's way more cooperation, but you get fewer cards to mess with, which I think was very interesting how they change it. So much so that the game actually recommends that you do not play the game at 3 or 4 players at the beginning. Start with a 2-player game and use teams if you have more than one, and only ramp up to 3 or 4 once you've learned the game, because the game dynamic changes considerably when you move from 2 to 3 to 4 players. So yeah, you go out, you hunt animals. If you can succeed in killing the animals, if you have the right symbols, like, a wild boar will need 3 spears. And if you have 3 spears on your guys, then you get to kill the boar. There's no chance, there's no rolling dice. If you have the right spears, you kill the boar. If you don't, you can either ignore it. Maybe it attacks you and you take a wound. And if you take a certain number of wounds, you get a skull. If there are certain things as well that allows you to inherit skulls. And if you get 5 skulls, the game is over for everybody. If, however, in this same big deck, which is split to all the players, there are anywhere from 5 to 6 extremely difficult challenges that allow you to get a part of a cave painting. And if you get all 5 cave paintings, 5 parts of the cave painting, you win the game. And so it's interesting because some of the forces that you fight, if you defeat them, it goes into the graveyard, which means you'll never see that card again in that game. If you don't defeat it, it goes right back into the deck, which means on the next day, when you distribute those cards again, you can have potentially that crisis will pop up again. If, however, you defeat the creature, it goes into the graveyard. You never see that creature again, which means the potential number of resources you get is fixed. And at the end of the day, you have to feed everybody. Mm-hmm. You then have to complete the challenge that's unique to the scenario. And if you do, you get to continue to play. If you don't, then you rack up skulls. And once again, if you rack up too many skulls, you die. Now, so that's how it's similar to Robinson Crusoe, in the fact that you have to scavenge in supplies. You then use those supplies to build things. Those things that are built can help you make the end game easier. At the end of every day, if you don't have shelter, you can take injuries. If you have too many injuries and people die, then you lose the game. So very, very, very similar to Robinson Crusoe in theme, just different in the way the mechanics are applied. However, it does one thing that's because two things that are different. A, its manual is very well written,
Okay.
very easy to understand. The manual, in fact, is only like 8 or 9 pages, and then there's a scenario book for the semi-story based missions. And the other reason is that it tells you to run this scenario first. And shocking, Nicole and I won our first scenario because they made the introductory scenario game easy, which means you play the game, you know how to play it, you finish the game. It was about halfway through the game, we go, oh, that's what we're doing. We were spending so much effort trying to build up our resources. I realized how the game was working, and I went to Nicole's like, we have to wrap this game up next day because we're running out of things. We're running out of ways to get supplies, and the negative cards don't go away, so they just stay there. And as your deck gets smaller, they're going to pop up more and more often. And we're going to start getting these skulls if we don't know what's if we're not careful. And then on that last day, we did it. We had 2 pieces of the puzzle, and we got the last 3 on one day because we were playing the game without thinking, oh yeah, we should be winning the game, not just playing the game. So now knowing that, we could hopefully play a harder difficulty and be able to finish it. So I haven't played the other missions, but I applaud Paleo, this Handsome Gluck Games being published by Z-Man. The designer, Peter, is an archaeologist who lives in Cologne. And I applaud him for making an easy to learn game, but making a cooperative game where the introductory game is not hard, where you're not discouraged, you enjoy your experience, and then the game can ramp up difficulty down the road. I wish more game designers who did cooperative games did this, because like I said, every time I get into a cooperative game nowadays, I'm like, is this going to be one of the stupid ones that makes the game too difficult? And when we finished the game, we had all 5 pieces, we had only 1 skull, and I went, I want to play this game again. But the last time we played a cooperative game, it was this very big budget tower defense game. And realizing after we started the game 3 times, we kept on losing, and we barely made the introductory game at the skin of our teeth. I went online, and everyone was just like, why is this game so stupidly difficult? And I was like, yeah. And this is a failure to a point now. Whenever I see a cooperative game on Kickstarter, I will always do the same thing. I'll ask a question. Hey, how's your difficulty? And I'll ask them very directly. And that's why I had originally backed Frostpunk, the board game, and then canceled it when they were boasting about how insanely difficult it was. And I'm like, yep, bye.
Yeah, nothing. Okay, but and this is a very difficult question I'm going to ask. If you had to recommend one, which one would you recommend? Robinson Crusoe or Paleo?
This is tough. Because I have a nostalgic loyalty for Robinson Crusoe, as it was one of the first. It's the first cooperative game I actually really enjoyed playing, and I really love the sci-fi version, which is First Martians, which is another game that's plagued by not being very difficult, but definitely having a huge problem with its manual and teaching people. It's a tough question. If someone is new to the industry and they're playing a game, they want to get a cooperative game, and they say, which one should I play, Paleo or Robinson Crusoe? I'm saying Paleo.
Okay.
Because I don't want to discourage them into a game like Robinson Crusoe, which is, like I said, very difficult unless you read to the back and find the ways of making the game easier. If you don't see it, you're probably thinking, oh, I can wrap this game, and then you fail the first time you play it. So Paleo is not discouraging. It's very easy to learn. Its footprint is low. I would definitely recommend Paleo. Now, the question is, if you have Robinson Crusoe, do you get Paleo? And I think the games are different enough. They scratch a similar itch, but the theming is different. That, we own First Martians and Robinson Crusoe and this one. So we have no problem having games that are very, very similar. But if Stickle's like, would you want to play another cooperative game? I would rather play this than Robinson Crusoe. Mm-hmm. This game is also, it's easier. It is also faster to set up and faster to play. If I have friends coming over and they want to play a cooperative game and we have to choose between Robinson Crusoe and this one, I'm not saying that this game replaces Robinson Crusoe, but I'm saying 8 times out of 10, I'm recommending Paleo over Robinson Crusoe.
Okay.
This is not discounting Portal Games and some of the amazing things that they've done, but Paleo kind of shows you how you could have done the exact same game easier
Mhm.
to learn and more fun to play.
Well, there you have it, people. Paleo over Robinson Crusoe 8 out of 10 times, which is quite surprising, actually. Very, very surprising. So, anyway, I think I'm done.
That's it. We're good. We got it.
Good.
We're tight. We got it in and we're out. We're done.
So we can say goodbye to people. Humans, thank you very much indeed for being there. Please remember to let us know if you'd rather see us live. Then comment or comment now. Seriously, we need to know these things. We make this podcast for you. So, with all these funny business about people who make them, it's pointless without people who play them, and that's you. So let us know what you think. Send us an email, podcast@gmsmagazine.com. Or find me on Twitter. I am at GMS Magazine. I am also at GMS Magazine in Facebook and in Instagram, which are the social networks I use the most. And by all means, do follow me on TikTok, where I am making all sorts of videos about role-playing games and board games as well.
And this is Chris from Deus Ex Machina. Find me on Deus Ex Machina on all social media channels and still Twitter for now.
And until next time, we will talk to you very, very soon, humans. Take care.